Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of TheoryForge Friday. This is episode 42, I believe, if I numbered things properly. And we've got with us today, we're going to talk about episodic games and kind of what goes into the content and design there and kind of how that might fit in the bigger landscape of games and explore all of that fun stuff. So today we have a few familiar faces. You guys will recognize Diggs and Sog, I'm sure, and most of you will probably recognize Tamlin as well from Evercast. We kind of do a lot of stuff together, bumping around. And then we've also got Paul from VNext.
Sync Build Run.
Sync Build Run, and you guys are designing VNext, and I don't know, I'll just let you jump off, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, give people a background, and kind of go into a little bit about your game.
Sure. Thanks for the intro, and thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Paul Furio. I've been doing software for almost 2 decades. I've been doing games since about 1999. Launched some PC titles, launched some Xbox 360 titles, and a Forza Motorsport on the original Xbox. Did some time in social, and just came off of a 3-year stint at Amazon. About 8-9 months ago. So for the past 9 months, I've started this company, Sync Build Run, getting back to my passion in gaming. And what I really wanted to do was turn the gaming industry a little bit on its head by looking at how we can create episodic games with a much more rapid turnaround in episodes. So there are lots of episodic type games that are out there now. Everyone knows the games by Telltale. They have The Walking Dead, they have Game of Thrones, and I guess they just licensed some Marvel properties. There's another great game that's known for being episodic, which is Kentucky Route Zero. It's more of a interactive theater or interactive play, but it's really visually stunning. There are some moments of real beauty there. There's a really quirky story. So other games have gone down this episodic path. What we want to do that's different is really provide games that have episodes that are a lot closer together. So if you look at a game like Kentucky Route Zero, what you see is episodes that are 6 months apart, a year apart. If you look at some of the Telltale titles, you see episodes that are 2 months apart, 3 months apart. And really at that cadence, what you're looking at is a lot more of downloadable content type delivery. So what we want to do is get that down to a television type schedule where every week, week over week, you know you're coming home at Tuesday at 5 p.m. from work or from school, and you have a new 30 to 60 minute experience, just like if you're going to watch your favorite sitcom or if you're going to watch a drama show or something else that's on TV. And you can play through that and you can drive the way the story goes. There are a bunch of reasons why we want to do that. I'll get into that in a few seconds. But the first title that we're doing with that is this title called VNext. And I guess there's a little like logo right there or something. But VNext is a cyberpunk game because cyberpunk is near and dear to my heart. I grew up reading Neuromancer and reading Snow Crash, and of course, big fan of the Matrix movies. But I think the time is right to tell stories about technology and how technology has affected our society and the ways in which we integrate with technology as gamers and just with people. Everyone has a cell phone in their pocket, a smartphone in their pocket. Almost everyone has a tablet or is familiar with the internet. So stretching that forward and doing a little forecasting and then telling an interesting story about the social implications and the economic implications and how can we talk about things like diversity in gaming in that space. So just covering a lot of modern topics in that. And our plan is to release that sometime between the end of this year and spring of 2016, depending on how much we get done and how fast we can operate. And then once the pilot comes out, start releasing an episode every week for about half a year. So that's the intro.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that one thing we're all familiar with on this show is we're big MMO players, most of us. That's kind of what brought us all together originally. But with MMOs, you run into a lot of problems with, how fast they can create content and get it out to the players. So obviously you guys are working on a different genre of game, but what types of things are you guys pursuing or design goals that is enabling you guys to kind of speed up or narrow this development time for the content you're producing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one of our largest challenges is to figure out how we can go and deliver this content on a week-over-week basis. If you look at industries like television, they have a pretty set schedule where the scripts are written a few weeks in advance, and they just go and they film this thing, and they know they have a 5 to 6 day filming period, and then they edit it, and they're basically, everyone is turning things around as quickly as they can to get a season going. And most TV shows will take a break halfway through, so they have like early season, and then maybe that break occurs along summer break or a holiday break, and they wait like 5-6 weeks, and they pick up the rest of the season. If we're going to do a straight 6 month all the way through, we're not going to have that advantage. And we're writing software. It has to be tested. It has to run on various different platforms. We can't only run on NVIDIA cards, but crash on AMD cards, so on and so forth. So we have all the complexities of software and dealing with game development with all the rapid delivery schedule of television. And lots of people have said to me, Paul, you're crazy. This can't be done. I think it can be done. I think it can be done if we're very smart about it. And I think it can be done if we get a little bit of a backlog going so that we know we have a bunch of episodes in the can. This leads to some other questions about why not release it all at once. But the reason that I really want to do the episodic thing on a weekly basis is there's a business reason, and there's also a social reason. The social reason is what I saw when I was at Amazon. And every Monday I'd go into work and meet with my team, and we would talk about what we're going to do pretty much every day, for that day. But Mondays were special because Game of Thrones had aired the night before on HBO. So we get in this group setting, and before we started talking about work, a few people on the team would start off with, "Oh my God, did you see Game of Thrones last night? I can't believe what Tyrion Lannister did. Oh, the Red Wedding, that was crazy." And the other half of the team would be saying, "Whoa, don't talk about this. I'm not caught up. I haven't watched this yet. Don't spoil it for me. Don't spoil it for me." So you get like these people talking vaguely about what was cool about the show, but try not to spoil things. Then you get people on the other side saying, "No, stop. Well, this would happen a couple weeks in a row, until, by about the third or fourth week, everyone who wasn't watching the show would finally cave and say, "All right, I just subscribed to HBO last night and I'm caught up, so now we can all talk about this." And I realized that there's this social cohesion that happens when you have people having the shared experience they want to talk about, and especially when they talk about it on that weekly cadence, when they know every time, every Monday at that same time, we're going to meet and we're going to talk about this thing. So there's an opportunity to really draw people in with that shared experience where that thing happened, and then you can talk about that thing happening. And you see that not just with TV, but you see this with sporting events. People will talk about the football game or the baseball game or whatever their big passion is. And this draws in more fans, and oh my God, that was an amazing pass, or whatever it winds up being. So I think from a social standpoint, getting that cadence down so that it's not, "Oh, did you binge play a couple of hours of this episode and then you don't experience it again for 3 months?" Getting that down can draw more people in, and you can start to compare and contrast. "Oh, I did this in that episode. What did you do in that episode? Oh, that's an interesting choice. I hadn't considered that." So we really want to make it social without falling down the paths of social gaming, having really annoying appointment mechanics like Facebook, or nagging your friends, but really having an engaging experience that then you come together afterwards and talk about. From a business standpoint, what we want to do is explore how stories can take different paths based on the choices that people make. So if people are making some choices in some episodes, or relating to certain characters in an episode, or relating to certain types of gameplay, or finding certain types of gameplay annoying, what can we do with the data that we understand about how people are playing the game and actually improve the game over time? So tweak future episodes based on how people have played previous episodes, but do that in a really rapid turnaround. So we've got these two challenges of producing content very quickly, as well as going and rapidly responding to how people are playing the game and providing a better experience week over week. It's very challenging. No one else is doing this. I think we have some opportunities there, but that's basically why we're doing what we're doing.
Interesting. Yeah, there's you kind of brought up the idea that people would be, playing a certain episode and then coming together and talking about it, and maybe sharing different experiences. All of us have been we started this show by following EverQuest Next, and one of the big things that turned us on about that game was the AI and the world setup in the way that player agency was going to have a much larger factor into things. So how much player agency are you thinking you guys are going to give players? Because it seems like with that type of rigorous schedule, you run into that situation where, is nobody going to choose this decision? Is this content that we made never going to get played? So can you talk maybe about some of that?
Sure, yeah, we're absolutely concerned about player agency and making sure that the players always feel like they're in control and that they're driving the story forward. So what we don't want is we don't want a game on rails. We don't want a game where these are my 3 choices, I can make them, now I have to go do this thing. I'm not really driving the story forward. I'm just playing a part, or there's a very limited subset. So we have these writers' meetings, and we've got these 3 great writers. We've got this guy Dan, this guy Case, and this woman Marcy. Dan and Case have worked on various titles at Microsoft and at other game companies, writing scripts and dialogue. Marcy's actually a screenwriter, and her movies have been on television. So we're making sure that because we have a very diverse character cast in the game. We want to make sure we have men and women helping to define these characters, and we have people from different backgrounds defining these characters. So every 2 weeks we meet to talk about the scripts that people are writing, and that's one of the topics that comes up very often is agency. How do we make sure that we're giving players agency? Part of it is when we have your standard branching dialogue trees. Player A said this, and then the player has the opportunity to choose from these choices, and then these branch out to other things, then there's other choices, making sure that we're giving players as many choices as we can, and disparate choices, so that if they're angry, they can answer one way. If they're happy, they can answer another way. If they feel frustrated, they can answer another way. And not taking that away and having like, oh, here's the funny answer, here's the obvious right answer, here's the throwaway answer, right? Let's give real choice and try and gauge the player's mood. The other thing is that we don't want a game where it is just dialogue choice and then some other very limited experience, and then dialogue choice and then some very limited experience. And this is, as much as I love the things that Telltale is doing, this is one of my problems with their games, is that you have these dialogue trees and then you have a dodge and click, almost Dragon's Lair type experience. Or you do some dialogue and then you've got your game mode that is, okay, now go find the hidden objects, and then you're back to dialogue. So we have a couple of different game modes that are tied very much to hacking and to the cyberpunk thing. But we also have areas of the game where it's, okay, you've been given a mission and you have to go do something, but really we've just set you free, and now there's a world outside, and you can just go explore that world and interact with other people. You can drive some side missions. You can just talk to people who are walking on the streets of Seattle and see if they know things, and then when you're ready to proceed with the main mission, you can go do that. Or maybe you'll get some side mission where someone needs you to hack someone else's cell phone, so you go do that for a while. It's super ambitious, but we think we're building the right tools that allow us to do this and make sure that we've given the player the freedom to go do the things that they want to do when they want to do it, and then come back to the main story when they want to come back to the main story.
Cool. I got a couple of questions.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's one character. It's like each player is playing the same character.
Correct. Every player will play this woman Vivian, who is a hacker who starts off the series in the same place as the player. So she was previously arrested. She had her mind erased. So she's learning to be this new hacker, or this great hacker again. So both the player and the character start on the same page.
And then, is there replay value? Can I replay throughout the week the same?
Absolutely. So two things that we want to do are allow you to go back to a previous episode and go play that again and make different choices, and of course have those choices pile on. One of the big ways that we're thinking about how they pile on is how you interact with NPCs. So if you've angered a certain character, you may have limited dialogue options, or they may be less likely to help you in future episodes. If you've befriended them, then they might be more eager to help you or give you discounts if they're selling you upgrade chips or things like that. Or maybe there's someone who really needs to be pushed around, and if you're really nice to them, they'll just walk all over you. So you have to gauge, oh, this is the type of character I kind of have to be mean to them, and maybe I'm not like that, but this is the way to get them to be more productive. So have that level of interaction. The other thing that we want to do for replayability is between episodes, we don't want to limit players to, oh, you just go play this episode over and over and over again, and maybe after the 4th or 5th playthrough, you've kind of exhausted the tree of possibilities. Instead, go have some randomly generated, almost roguelike mini missions that can happen over the course of the week. So you can come back to it for maybe half an hour every night, and oh, you've got a little side mission you can run, and there's another little side mission you can run, and that might help you level up a little faster, or it might build some skills, or it might tell a side story or something like that. again, super ambitious, and we want to slip this all into the schedule. We'll see how much of it we can actually accomplish. If any of these things we don't get done in Season 1, we'll get them in Season 2.
It kind of reminds me of Versu. I don't know if you've played, but
what's the game?
It's called Versu.
Okay.
It's like a Versu.
Okay.
And it's kind of like it might not be online anymore, but it's kind of a choose your own adventure.
Sure.
But the AI reacts to different decisions you make, and they will react differently based on their emotional mood at the time in the moment. So different playthroughs, they probably won't act exactly the same same way, so you end up with different outcomes. Sometimes they will flirt with you.
Sure.
I was playing one where I was supposed to try and marry the ingenue, but her chaperone started flirting with me. Like, okay, I guess maybe I should go for the dowager instead of the ingenue. I don't know.
Right.
I played back through, and I tried to flirt with the dowager, and she got pissed off. So it just depended on how each person felt in any given moment, and I kind of get that same feeling in the sense of, different characters will have different moods that, you'll have to try to figure out how to make them work, how to work them to do what you want. And did you say there's also a mobile component to it?
So there's not a mobile component. We're releasing the game primarily for PC and for Mac. We would like to also release it on iOS and Android. It really depends on how much we can grow our development staff, and that relies on the Kickstarter, which is coming up in about a week and a half. So if we blow it out of the water with a Kickstarter, great, I can go hire a couple of mobile developers, and we can make sure that we're porting this thing over correctly. Our technology choice will also make that easier or harder, depending on how we may change things up in the future. Speaking on the point about the dialogue and the character choices, and this goes all the way back to the text adventures, the Infocom games that I used to play, back in the 80s. You're talking Zork, we're talking Planetfall, the really the my age games. Because I'm 40, so I'm up there. But back in those days, I mean, all you had was text, and all you had was these you could type to people, and they would type back these messages, and it was amazing how on these comparatively tiny computers with very low processing power, you could get a lot of that personality across. You could get a lot of that emotionality and intent across, and a lot of it was faking it. But players will read into that if you have done a clever enough job of, here's the interactions, and they're professionally written, and we're doing a little bit of tracking behind the scenes of, what was the mood, or what was the potential cause behind this interaction. So it's amazing how little work you have to do to get the type of experience you just described across, but that's so impactful to the player, and we really want to make sure that we draw players in with great characters. So I'm glad you brought that experience up. I think it's something that we're striving for sure.
So how are you working to mitigate
I love that word.
exponential path growth?
Yep.
So like every time you make a decision, 3 more options open up, and they lead it, because I'm getting the impression that you're planning on writing a story. You have a story to tell, and that, in my mind, I'm correlating it to comic books that I like to read when they come out, and instead of wait for them. Especially right now with the Marvel Secret Wars, it's important to be reading them right now because the tone of them is different when you don't know anything else about the world yet, and it matters. So
instead of waiting for the trade.
Yeah, if you wait for the trade with these, you're missing you'll miss the real force of what's going on and the real feeling behind it. But that's how I'm equating it in my mind. But when we add in player agency, is it giving players a little bit of freedom to be themselves as they experience a fairly linear path, or because the tree gets real big real fast. The tree gets big in one episode if you don't do something about it. Right?
Yeah, so we're not doing the Chris Crawford thing of players will create their own story and you go from here, out to everywhere. That's insanity. We're not a large enough team or a large enough company to go and take that path. When we do talk about player agency, largely what we talk about are interactions, and we talk about opportunities. So Graham Nelson, who wrote this this side log to one of the interactive fiction writing manuals, I think it's called the Craft of Adventure. It's the second part of this technical manual on how to write these text adventures. This craft adventure part is largely about how to craft adventures and how to tell stories and how to create characters and what is important. And one of the things he talks about are these diamonds. So you have these starting points, and then you branch back out, and then you come back in. And the different branches that you take may loop back on each other, or this branch may unlock this branch, and then you can progress forward, or this may unlock that. But then you get back to this melding point where you say, oh, okay, now we have A, we have B, we didn't go down the C path, we have D, okay, that unlocks this other thing. And that differentiator will now determine, what opportunities are available to us in the future. So this matches back to a lot of standard TV procedurals where your usual cop procedural or old 1980s show, basically every show starts at the same point. We want to make sure that we are telling a story, so not every story starts at the same point. Some characters will be dead. Some characters will have changes going on. But the things that are open to you when you go in episode 3 and try and talk to someone and say, hey, can I get this information? Or even like an entire side mission may be cut off to you as a player because of something you did 2 episodes before. So we have a limited subset of what are the ways that we can enable the player to have different experiences, but we still come back to some point where, okay, maybe you didn't save 100% of the people on the sinking boat by the end of this episode, and that will affect other people's perception about you, but you got to the end of the episode and in some way you saved the boat. Going back to what we just said about agency, there's a real give and take here with this, where we have to give players lots of opportunities to do things, but we are telling a story. So it's really walking a fine line between a crossword and a novel. How do we make sure that we're giving players the freedom to go do the things they want to do, and sometimes take breaks and go do something different, but still tell a story that we want to tell?
And how likely is catastrophic failure?
So if you die, you will go back to the last save point. It can happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are, where we have, again, this is another conversation that we have with our writers, which is, okay, Vivian is running from security guards in this scene. What happens if she gets caught by the security guards? Like, well, back to jail for her, but for the player, let's rewind it and give them another chance.
You should have been on the treadmill instead of drinking a couple beers in the last episode, or you would have been fast enough.
Exactly.
It sounds like hardcore mode is going to be you progressing through. Anytime you die, you go back to episode 1.
Oh, I don't know about that, right? We don't want to have the Shadow of the Beast experience, like the old Amiga Shadow of the Beast experience.
Back to the red wedding
that's some of the players are going to try and play through. Like, I have to get through without ever dying or getting caught or something like that. Like, that's my challenge.
Yeah, and that's fine. If that's what they want to do, they should do that. That also comes back to the trade paperback versus the episodes on a week-over-week basis. So I think there are definitely people who will just wait till the end of the season and then get it and then binge play it. Just like there are people who like to watch House of Cards all at once. They'll just go watch it over a weekend in a day, and then they got their experience. They're done. The opportunity for players who actually play the game as it comes out, not only is the social aspect and I can go and retry things and let's see what's coming out in the anticipation aspect, but also the opportunity to know that the choices they're making and the things that they're doing are being viewed by the development staff, and we're using that information to go shape how the story goes forward. The episodes week over week, then you are helping us define what the story is. If you wait till the end and you just play it all at once, okay, that's fine, but you're going to get the story that other people have helped define along the way. So it's really your choice. Do you want to binge it, or do you want to be an interactive participant in helping shape exactly how does this end up?
Like adjusting your on-stage performance for the next show that you do based on the reaction you see in the faces of the people watching.
Precisely. Yep.
Okay.
That's a great analogy there, to bring in some theatrical elements into it, like realizing that, wow, we really nailed this part of the story right here, and people got a great reaction out of it. So we, keep that in mind while you're moving the story forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So my question then is that each episode is going to be a story in itself with an overall seasonal story arc?
Yeah, so we have a story arc that we've mapped out, and there's some very strong themes to that story. What we are doing, partly as a safety, and this is a discussion that we have with our writers, is we are altering our arc episodes versus our Monster of the Week episodes. So they're not really Monster of the Week, but it's what the X-Files used to call them, and it's what a lot of shows call them. So we have sort of these one-off episodes where maybe we'll tie in a little bit of the story arc at the end of the episode or at the beginning, but really we can go off on a tangent and explore some social issue or explore some technological issue that doesn't tie into the overall arc. And then the following week, okay, here's an arc episode with the main arc characters, and this moves the story forward or changes the environment in some way. This gives the writers an opportunity to go and do some wild, crazy things, and then also not have to rely on 100% of our episodes are story arc episodes. Only half of them are arc episodes, and therefore we can move the story forward in this fashion. I'm not sure if that actually answered your question.
That actually explained it better in a way I didn't understand, but I remember Smallville was the first episode, the first television show that I followed that had that sort of freak of the week where it's like this episode didn't move the plot along at all. It was like a filler space,
right?
And so that actually makes a lot of sense. When you're creating a game in that sort of formula.
It was Stargate for me. But sometimes they just went to a planet,
Yep.
But there was a good enough mix that it kept you going, and you saw the whole story and you were part of it. It wasn't like Sliders where you're like,
yeah.
Oh my God, this whole show is really just about Monster of the Week.
Right.
Right. And it's a story that somebody else already wrote every single time. And,
right. We're in the pink is blue world. Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So Fringe did this really well, I think, where, they had the mix of Monster of the Week plus story arc episodes, but they always tied something in. So there was always that, 3 minutes at the end, even of a Monster of the Week episode, which was, what happened with Walter this week? Or, now we're in the alternate universe and this thing happened. Okay, that's interesting. So it's really, it's going to rely very much on the quality of our writers, and we have very talented writers to make sure that we're tying that in, and we don't have that Stargate or that Sliders experience for our players. We want people to think okay, this isn't an episode that drove the arc forward, but it was still compelling. I still like being in this world. I like the things I learned this week.
What's the time frame inside the world between episodes? Is it going to be 24 where it's hour to hour, or is it going to be week to week, or or does it matter? Maybe you'll mix it up. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we will mix it up, and it will probably be on the range of a week to a month or so in between episodes. So I'm working on writing the first episode right now, and we have an outline that we've shared with the writers, but I'm really getting in and driving the dialogue and driving what's happening. And as I'm diving into here's the different action modes and here's the different story modes and the different dialogue, we're finding that this very first episode probably takes course over about 2 to 3 days. So we have some night scenes, we have some following morning scenes, things like that. So we'll probably see that episodes take place over a few days or take place over a week, and then a following episode takes place either immediately thereafter because it's a continuation, or takes place about a week or 2 weeks later because, these other things happened in the meantime, or you were just out running missions and now this other thing happened, or maybe there's some event, like we want to time something around a holiday or some other made-up future event.
Yeah, the in-between missions are interesting to me because as a writer I see it as a story mechanic you can use to adjust your timelines to make your larger story arc feel more epic or compelling, or it can be used for narrative purposes. But at the same time, earlier you mentioned players being able to pick up side missions and actually progress skills. And that actually wasn't something I was considering when I was first reading about the game and finding out about it, is having some type of non-narrative progression that players can have. So I'm actually really curious what that is all about and what kind of things you guys have defined for that so far.
Sure, that's pretty hazy right now, but we are talking about a cyberpunk future where you could potentially level up skill chips. We have to be careful about how much we dole out week over week. What we don't want is someone just to grind it and then basically max out all of their skills so that by episode 2 they can hack everything like that, because then that actually becomes not fun. And because it's not a multiplayer experience, we're not worried about oh, here's the grinder who went and then they could go and blow everyone else away because they're so much better. They have the uber weapon. But we still want to adjust that level of challenge versus frustration and make sure that we're riding the right level there. So we'd see things like if we can dynamically adjust the challenge of maybe a hacking puzzle, or if we can give you some subroutines that you can then go compile and build a better hacking program. So we might slip those in week over week. So as you're playing the interstitial stuff, if you play 5 or 6 interstitial missions and you're successful at all of them, then we give you this extra thing for free that you might get in the coming episode anyway, or it might just be a bonus that gives you something so that you can go and build a program again for hacking, or maybe get a component for a piece of hardware that you would not get otherwise. That right now is hazy. We know we want to do it. We haven't completely defined how we're going to do it, but we have thought about some of the types of missions that you would go on, and they would be things like go steal this thing, go break into this place. Our major game modes are this circuit board mode where you can go build or repair or modify hardware. So it might be something like go steal someone's equipment and then plant some bugs in it and then replace it. So now you're siphoning off their bank account information as they're logging online, and that helps you go do something else. Or a code creation and code hacking mode where you go and you build intrusion software, very much like Transistor, how you drag and drop the different components of software, and then you go and you build various combinations of attack weapons there, and then you go use that to go hack into hack into a server and break through their firewall. So we might give extra subroutines or extra components there, but again, it's not fully defined yet. I think we'll wind up doing what is most fun for the player once we explore some mechanics and test that.
Now, you have one defined narrative that you want the player to experience, and you're giving opportunity for divergence off of that. Because it's not television, how many Easter eggs are you going to put in there? How many hidden little stories are you going to put into the, or are you going to do that at all, so that one player might get the experience of the main narrative that you're trying to get across, and another player might get that and then something else that was hidden?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to put in tons and tons of Easter eggs. Right now we have lots of sly references to to Blade Runner, to Snow Crash, to Neuromancer. I think at some point I quoted either Tron or something else in some dialogue that I'm writing. How many people will get that? I don't know. I think we'd love to have tons of those in there. It's just a matter of what our writers come up with and what we have the effort to do. We've seen some of it in our concept art and also the production art. So our concept artist Ian threw in a bunch of pretty visible references to William Gibson in some of the concept art that's up on our website. And our production artist Sebastian put some stuff in his pixel art, and I had to squint real hard to look at it, and I'm like, oh, that's clever. Okay, I don't know if anyone will notice that, but cool. So we're going to try and slip those in wherever we can. And then other things that we're trying to do are just work with other talent that people who are familiar with the genre will know and appreciate. So we're reaching out to some electronic musicians who were very popular in the late 80s and early 90s to try and get them on the soundtrack. We still have to sign a contract with them, so I can't go into too much details about it. And it really comes down to, again, how much money we raise and cost. But we'd love to have, a band like Information Society on the soundtrack, so that people who are familiar with that can say like, oh, okay, this is really reaching. These people know what they're doing. They're getting all the references in. Again, it all comes down to scope. Game development is very, very difficult. We have to make something that is entertaining and that works, but we also want to slip in as many of those things as we can. So if we have the time, we'd love to do it. And anything that we don't get in, again, Season 1, we'll do it Season 2 or Season 3.
15 minutes into the future? What's the time frame?
Yeah, it was like, was it 15 minutes or was it 20? But yeah.
I was going to say 22, but yeah.
Yeah, no, Max Headroom is a huge influence. I got the DVDs and like binged watched them I think the week before I started this whole project. So we're looking at, are you talking about what's the time frame of the setting of the game? Yeah, so we're looking around the 2035 to 2045 time frame. Originally, we were pushing it really far in the future, and then we said, well, wait a second. If we go more than 20 years in the future, I mean, things could go anywhere. Let's just look back about 20 years and look at how much things have changed. I don't think anyone predicted the iPhone 20 years ago, and modems were just coming around. But what we're able to do right now with video chat over my cable connection, and then streaming this out to hundreds, thousands, potentially millions of users for you guys. I mean, this is incredible. And 20 years ago, people would have said like, oh, there's no way. Telephone lines can't support that. Well, we developed fiber optics and gigabit networking and really inexpensive video cameras. So all these advances have happened. If we look past 20, 30 years from now, things would just go in directions that we can't predict. So we're keeping that time frame where at least we can extrapolate from where we are now and then go to something that we think is at least understandable and believable.
You kind of have me wishing that I would be able to play my episodes on YouTube, meaning like, I just played through an hour-long thing. Let me replay it on my YouTube channel. So, each week I'm putting up my episode.
Yep, and that's something we considered. Like, how can we have a recording mode so you could potentially play it back, or maybe if you're in a family situation and you're the gamer, but the rest of your family is interested in this story. Wouldn't it be great if I could like go play this for for an hour on my own, and then say, hey, here's the episode I just played. Let's sit down and watch it. And then they could say, oh, why'd she do that? And be like, well, actually, I thought that would be a good idea at the time. But not have like, here's all the dialogue choices that you chose. Just this character speaks, and then here's the choice you made, and then this character speaks, and then here's the choice you made, and then here's the adventure you went on. So that was something we considered like 6-8 months ago. I don't know how to do that technically, and I don't know how to do it in a... well, I know how I could do it technically, but I don't know how to do it technically in the best way possible for viewers and players, or if we want to do streaming, or if we want to do something like Twitch or YouTube. It's definitely something that's in our backlog, and we'd love to... If there's enough draw for that, maybe we'll get that across all of our titles in the future at some point. But I think I'm glad that you raised that. It means it's not a totally crazy idea that I came up with that I should just flush. It's like, okay, at least one other person wants to do this. Cool. This is a good idea.
Right. I was just thinking, we were talking Civ right before, and one of my favorite things to do in Civ was create a save point and then go nuclear war on everybody. And then back up to my save point and play the game normally, like, diplomacy and everything like that. Is that going to be one of the features that if I want to, like, play the game, like, save it on the fly at a certain point in time, play it one way, and then back up to a specific point that I chose? Or is it going to have the developers choosing where the save locations are going to be at?
Yeah, so what we're thinking right now is how would aggregate decisions episode over episode affect the decisions later on when a new episode comes. We would love to do, I think what you're describing is the Papers, Please model. If you've played that game every day, because it's something like a 40-day campaign, but at the end of every day there's a save and then a branch, so you can go back and play any episode or play any single day in Papers, Please, and then it branches off, and then you can pick up from that day, and there'll be different choices going forward. But that's definitely the type of story where, like, if you make certain choices, it cuts off, like, completely cuts off other options to you later on. So if you go and replay a day, it doesn't overwrite that one save. For simplicity's sake, what we were thinking of is, whatever the latest way that you played a certain episode, those settings would go in aggregate forward. So not entirely cut off total possibilities, just cut off different things that you could say or different things that you could do and we have to be careful episode over episode to make sure that you wind up in enough of the same state that you have the same piece of hardware that you need to unblock some puzzle or something like that. I think that what you're talking about we could do. I think it adds a lot of complexity, and again, it depends on the scope. So again, we may get to that in a later season.
Are gamers bingers?
That's a great question.
This is my like I like my comic books. I like my TV shows. I experience different ones in varieties of different ways. When I play a video game, I play one video game.
Yep.
I sit down. I play it until one day I decide to not play it again, and then I don't go back and play it. I'm excited about the idea, but am I the norm, or am I just like putting my own experience on other people?
No, that's an excellent question, and I think there's a range of players, but it's an unknown question because look, we go back to why was Episodic. Why did Episodic really start to become a thing? And it's not for players. It's for game developers. It's a cost reduction scheme because game developers realize, like, instead of making a whole game, I can just make 20% of a game and then shove it out there and then see if people are interested in it. And then if they are, okay, then I'll work for 3 months and make another 20% of the game and then put that out there. Right, so typically Episodic is the type of thing that has been advantageous for cost cutting for game developers, and kind of let's float a pilot and see if this goes, instead of building a whole thing, putting it out there, and then watching it flop. So by doing the week over week, we're actually positing that there are players who do want to come back to something on a regular basis. We do see this with some social games where there's that mechanic and people like having a shorter experience, but those experiences are typically 30 seconds or 5 minutes, and then you play it while you're waiting in line, or you play it while you're sitting in your car waiting to pick up your kid from school, or what have you. So hitting that television sweet point, what we're really saying is there are some players out there who want to play games like they watch TV. They're going to allocate 30 minutes. They're going to allocate 60 minutes. They're going to have this experience. I think there's a ton of people who do like to binge, right? They just want to play Deus Ex all the way through, or they just want to play, any of the I don't even know what the large story-based games that have come out recently are. But any of those, they just want to play them beginning to end. Any of the Grand Theft Auto ones, right? Like go play the main mission, and then they get to the end, or they get to some point where they're frustrated, and they're like, okay, good, I've blown enough stuff up, or I've slapped around enough hookers, whatever it winds up being, right? So there's very clearly a market for that, and that's great. So we're taking a huge risk here. We're taking a risk that players will want to keep coming back, and they'll want to see new things. They'll want to drive a story forward. And the answer is we don't know, and we won't know until we do it. And since this is largely a personal risk of time and finances right now, I'm willing to take that risk because I want to know. If we are successful with it, then great. Our team and our group is successful, and we can start to drive this forward. And I'm sure there will be copycats who then go and start carrying the mantle forward with this. If not, okay, we tried. Now the industry knows something. Awesome. And then we see where we pivot from there.
So you expect that one session, that the minimum amount of time, if you don't replay, if you don't do side missions, somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes a week of commitment to stay with it and not feel like you're falling behind your friends who have more time or whatever. Is that...
Yeah, that would be our range. A minimum of 30 minutes experience. We want it to be just like a TV show. Certainly for the amount of story that we want to tell and the content and the price point, we think that 30 minutes is a minimum. We'd rather aim for like an hour-long type episode. Again, it will come down to how good players are and what are the choices that they make and how much time they spend just sort of wandering around. If they only go and just blaze through it, or they decide like, I hate dialogue sucks, skip all. I mean, they may have a shorter experience. But really what we're targeting is that 30 to 60 minute range, aiming more towards 60. The pilot, the very first episode, will probably be about 2 to 3 hours, but that's because we're going to spend a large portion of the first half of that episode just training the player. Right, going through the standard Portal type experience where, okay, this is how you move, and this is how you walk, and these are the different puzzle types, and this is how you interact, and these are the characters. Okay, now that we've introduced you to the world, and a lot of it will be familiar to players who've played, any type of WASD plus mouse type adventure game. But we want to make sure that we really hold players' hands enough so that they get what they're doing, so that when they're actually involved in the story, they know what they're doing, they're not confused and frustrated.
I was laughing because pilot episodes, it's not unusual for them to be 2 hours. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we anticipate that.
I think it's really interesting the time. It's a great time to do it because I think people are getting more and more acclimated to the idea of episodic content. I mean, comics were done like that in a lot of ways, and there are video games today, it's like every game is a franchise these days. There's always a sequel. Even movies now, like you get hour-and-a-half, 2-hour-long movies, and that's one part of a bigger story. So I mean, I think people are used to this, and I think there's a lot of benefits to it because something as writing for a site that covers games, specifically MMOs, we run into the challenge of how do we provide meaningful content for people because with the internet and everything, people are playing a game, and you get into this competitive edge, and then people want to just like look up all the information. Right. And I feel like episodic games help solve or mitigate some of those issues of kind of ruining the fun for people of a game because if you can only get to this point, then you can only get to that point, and there's not going to be that one player who doesn't have a job, doesn't have anything to do, and he beats the game in a couple days, and then all the information's out there, and
right.
A lot of the discovery nature and exploration is, kind of washed by then. So I think it's a really interesting move, and I was excited to see Telltale start doing things like that, and I'm really excited to see what you guys are describing with this more, shortened time frame, more quick pace, shorter episode type deal. So that's really interesting to me. I just think that, people are being kind of geared mentally for that already, and then I think it solves some of the issues that I see, with games in general of, even console games, you run into that because, we do have smartphones in our pocket. You can pick it up and look up, any information. So I think it, helps mitigate some of the issues, but it's definitely interesting to hear.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope our players are interested too.
No, and as I'm older and adult, I don't have like the hours to just like devote myself to a game and just play it for 8 hours at a time. And when I'm having those family discussions about like, well, what are you doing tonight? It's like, I think I'm going to sit down and just get just an hour or so, and then we can go do whatever. And so when I'm able to block my time, like, it makes my life so much easier. And so that's one of the things. It's like, oh, well, what do you do on Tuesday nights? Well, I play this game. It comes out. I get my DLC, and off I go.
Right.
That's exactly what I was going to say, back in the day, because I tend to pick a game. I have hardcore time usually, so I can play 4 or 5 hours if it captures me. Sometimes, depending on where I am in a development cycle, if I'm, actually localizing a game, then, I don't have that time either.
Sure.
But I think, back in the day when we were younger, we had lots of time, and now lots of us are older with kids and jobs, and, we don't have that time. 30 minutes to an hour is a good chunk of time for us. So I think it's a good time for that, too. Yeah, I think it's a good time for this, too.
And no more staying up till 3 a.m. Playing SimCity till all you see is like little squares the next day.
You just leave it going and come back and you're rich. Come on, you know these tricks.
Who's rich?
So with the game, is a lot your game specifically, is it gonna be very hands-on? I play games like Tanlin says he has an hour of time. I have, like, all day, but I have random moments in the day.
Sure.
So I play, like, turn-based things that I can leave on in my computer, and I can just, like, click a button and move on and progress. So, which is why I said when we were talking briefly that I used to consider myself an MMORPG guy, but I really can't play an MMORPG the way that I play video games now.
Sure.
With VNext, story-driven type experience. You said that it feels a lot like a WASD movement.
Yep.
It's is there much action to it?
Yeah, so we're not creating a shooter. I would say the world mode where you are wandering around this futuristic Seattle is very much like Gunpoint or any other side scroller. So again, you're running. There's a stealth element. There's some hiding. There's jumping and crouching and that type of stuff. Not so much shooting because we're trying to solve problems with technology, but you will probably use you'll definitely use your PDA, use your smartphone to go and control the environment. But we'll have a pause menu, so if you need to take your breaks or things like that, you can. And between these modes, like as you are going from, okay, I'm in world mode, I'm going and stealing this piece of hardware, and then I'm taking it back to my headquarters, and now I'm in workbench mode. When you switch from world mode to circuitry mode, dealing with that workbench, okay, that's an excellent point to just take a break or save the game and stop. Right. So as soon as you switch modes to now I'm messing with the circuit board, it is not a time pressure type thing where like, oh no, you are in an unsafe space and you have to solve this circuit board puzzle before these guards get to you. You can't look up from the circuit board and see the guards around you. You will be in a safe environment where like, okay, now I could just, this is the calm part of the game. I could literally spend hours just like playing with circuits here and going and seeing if I put this chip here, does it burn out or does it do something interesting? Okay, great. Take a break there. Go make your sandwich. Go do work or whatever you need to do, and then come back and you can pick up right there when you left off. And on the point about the weekly episodes and the opportunity there, the last thing I want to say about that was a thing I really like about episodic TV shows is trying to anticipate what's going to happen next week based on what I've seen in the previous episodes. So right now I'm really watching *Halt and Catch Fire*, which if you haven't seen it on AMC, it's this great show about computer people making hardware, making now online games on Commodore 64s in the mid-'80s. And what I like about their writing is you'll go and say like, oh, well, this happened. I bet next episode is going to go in this direction, or this person is turning into that type of person, or they've got this personality thing. So when an episode comes out a week later after I've gotten all these things in my head about like, oh, I bet they're going to go down this path, or I bet they're going to go down that path, and something different happens, I'm pleasantly surprised. So I think that's another advantage to having that week-long delay is that you can start to imagine where you think you might want the story to go, but then hopefully if our writing is good enough, you're delighted because it went in some entirely new direction, and then it opened up even more doors for, oh, but now this could happen. So we'd love to have that happen, but it really comes down to our writers.
It definitely does, because the trap of creating a situation where if you don't go one way,
yeah,
it just becomes bad. Like,
yeah.
You're halfway through the season of a TV show and you're like, well, anyone who's ever done any fiction writing or taken any classes on anything, if now they don't do that,
right,
they better make up some fantastic reason to convince me that they're just not bad.
Yeah. And we have these discussions every 2 weeks about the polar bear in Lost, right? Like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to, like, introduce something and then have people say, oh, this must be because of this, and then we never visit it again. Because that winds up being a terrible experience for the viewers. Because by the end of the season, they're like, what about the fucking polar bear? What happened? It's like, oh, yeah, well, it was this other thing, and we'll just hand-wave it away and talk about something else.
And they came out and said later on that they had no intention on paying back viewer anticipation.
Yeah. So we're being very cognizant to not make it up as we go along. That's why we have a story arc that's mapped out. We're writing these episodes ahead of time. We all meet on a regular basis. We understand the implications of everything so that, players will understand, oh, this is why that happened, or okay, this thing happened in episode 2 and then there was a payoff in episode 6. I get it. Right? We'll if we're going to do anything crazy, it is going to be a Chekhov's gun. Okay? We are literate and we understand how to write this type of stuff.
No Harry Potter, the huge long story, and it really just comes down to he's really made out of love.
Yeah, that's it.
You know that it just can't boil down like that. Please.
Wait. Speaking of that, though, you do like I've always felt like a good story always has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so when you're writing the V Next with Vivian as the main character, are you writing it in such a way that at some point in time the story with Vivian comes to an end, and then you have to make a decision, you know, another character or a completely different genre / game type thing?
So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I mean, there's an arc to Vivian, right? Like, we want her to start out in one place, and we want her to end in another place that's different from who she is when she started the story. And going back to the agency part, it's kind of about how she gets there, that the player will help determine. But without spoiling it, there's a real story that we want to tell about personal confidence and about how a person grows and how a person gains the skills or gets good at whatever it is they're good at. So there's definitely like a beginning and a middle and an end, and there's definitely, you know, major character changes that happen to primary but not the player characters over the course of the episode that we've already mapped out, and we're discussing, you know, what are going to be the implications when this happens to this character? How is she going to relate to this character in the future? Is this, you know, this is a twist, and it's going to mean, like, at this episode, she's probably going to be kind of squirrely about this, that, and the other thing. So we're mapping out all of those things. We want to make sure that there's a definite arc, so at the end there's that feeling of emotional payoff. But I'm not really sure I answered your question.
I think I can, because what Tanlin said reminds me of 2 TV shows. One of them is Secrets and Lies.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one where in the first season there's a guy who's accused of killing the neighbor kid, and we have to figure out who in the neighborhood actually did it.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be a second season, but in the second season, it's just going to be the cop who is investigating that crime who's going to be a recurring character in the next season. And then there's what was the other one that just came out? Oh, I'm thinking of American Horror Story, where each season,
Sure.
you know, same actors but different characters. So I think
And
it's wondering whether or not that character is going to remain, or will you move on to a different character at the end.
Well, and I was thinking, like, because we had talked about Smallville, you know, about the Monster of the Week thing, and Smallville is one of those television shows that I always point to and say, like, that show should have ended like 2 or 3 seasons before it actually did. You know, but they because it was a production cycle, since, you know, it was like, okay, well, we do
criticism.
Right. And so, do you have that sort of, you know, forecasted in your writing that, okay, so at this point in time, we have to, you know, we don't want to get to the point where the story is now irrelevant because it's no longer good quality writing. It's writing because it's production. This is what we do.
Yes, so we've talked about what's the 5-year arc, and where do we want the character to be at the end of 5 years. In writing, the middle is usually called the desert. So we're talking about how do we cross the desert. We do want the story to be Vivian's story year over year, and we are considering up to 5 years of this. I'm happy to pull a Babylon 5, and if we have to, you know, make it only a 4-year season or a story or a 3-year story because we say all the things we need to say and then we move on to a different IP, that's totally fine. But we are thinking, right now we're focused largely on Season 1, but we know where we want our main character's overall arc to be. So there'll definitely be a beginning to Season 1 and an end to Season 1 where the character has changed, and we also know where we want her to be at the end of the series. In the middle, I think there's lots of stories that can be told in there. The 3 characters that we'll probably have throughout the entire season are Vivian, this mysterious mercenary called the Factor, and then this woman, Serafina Jackson, who is a hardware dealer. So I think these 3 characters will carry on as much as possible over, you know, up to 5 seasons, which is what we're planning. But yeah, we don't want to. If someone says by like year 3 or season 3, like they should have canceled this at season 2. We hope to know that halfway through season 3, so we can just end season 3 very gracefully and then move on to a different IP.
Or no Fat Lee from Battlestar Galactica. If anyone ever watched that show, that period that you knew where you wanted to be at the end of season 4. But for some reason, we got Fat Lee in the middle of this.
Right.
So, I had a bigger topic here too that I wanted to discuss at some point, especially given that our audience is primarily MMOs. I would say is a lot of our audience that has followed the show for so long. But really, I'm going to preface this topic with kind of something so that you guys. I'll get it to a point where it all makes sense here, but. Like the original EverQuest, when that came out, I felt like that was a complete game. And then at some point, they're like, hey, we can add on to this. And it created this type of development cycle where you're just adding on to something and kind of changing the original product from what it was. And I feel like that's kind of the situation a lot of MMOs are in. And, it's led a lot of us to... And I feel like there's two ways generally that the MMO industry can go, and we've kind of beat to death on this show a lot. Well, we've never beat it to death. There's plenty to say, but we've talked about one side where they can make the world in a dynamic, ever-changing way where you'll always find something to do and you'll always be able to push and maneuver the world around. But I feel like there's another path that MMOs can go where they move to something that's more like an episodic type thing where you have this giant persistent world where people are sharing the experience, and you have these story arcs that have planned beginning and ends, and this type of content that comes and goes, and it's built in a different way. So that was something that I thought would be kind of really interesting to talk about and get everyone's opinions. If you were to see an MMO in an episodic form, what types of things would you expect, or what would you want out of it? And maybe name a mechanic that you think would be, a good emphasis or something that would help a game like that succeed. Because I feel like unless MMOs go towards a sandbox route of having this ever-changing living world you can kind of push around and have a role in another, virtual world, you have to have this persistent narrative that, has an arc story that it constantly changes on a expected basis, I would say. So anybody can jump into, and just if you're feeling so talking about.
I will voice one of the criticisms I hear on a regular basis, and that is that when MMOs try to deliver their narrative and they try to deliver a story, you got to get the whole story while you're playing the game, because a lot of people resent that they can't just get it while they're playing the game. They have to go like, oh, there's this webcomic or this YouTube video that explains this part of the story that's happening in the game. But if you didn't know about that other stuff, you missed it. And so you're like, well, what? This character is now dead. How'd that character end up dead? I don't know how that character died. And then you have to go, well, for one, like when you realize it, you look stupid around everybody else because they're like, well, didn't you know? And so that would be my comment about like delivering a narrative in a persistent world. If you're gonna do it, you need to make sure that it's all available while you're playing the game, and not make them like have to refer to other, read a comic or all that other stuff that's out there.
Well, if we're talking about episodic MMOs, of course, the first one that comes to mind is going to be Revival, because that's the plan, especially on the gold servers, is to have a team of storytellers telling an episodic story each week. So each week they get together and decide what the story of the week is going to be, and keep that progressing. But to jump on to what Tanlin said, I mean, I love one of the things I love about Neverwinter is all the different mediums with which I can learn about that world. There's different characters. I mean, I love having the different mediums that I can read about stuff in a novel, or something that happens through each year through the campaign is going to impact the games that I'm playing. And I feel like, I mean, each medium that I'm in, I mean, when I played the Facebook game, I felt like I was really living in Neverwinter based on the campaigns that were going on that I was reading about, or the novels that were coming out at the time. There were all these references to characters and stuff. So I like the cross-medium stuff, and I'm actually hoping we get a lot more of that at some point. A lot meta, just this meta world of you can get this information from all these different places.
And I think that the way that not just like games are going, but we even see that in movies and television, because now it's like if you're following along with the Marvel's universe, right? Like you watch the movies, you watch the television shows.
Yeah.
Are they writing like comics that are related to that same world and universe as well? So you've got all of these.
But yeah,
a comic came out, but it's not. It's like inspired by the TV show.
The TV show comics are like TV show fan fiction, but no, it's like Game of Thrones is like Song of Ice and Fire fan fiction now.
Right.
It's not. It's different, but storytelling in an episodic nature in an MMORPG is very, very possible, but it's the conveyance mechanism that needs to be taken such good care of that it shouldn't be like the next 4 bosses of Ice Crown Citadel are up and you could go fight them in World of Warcraft or whatever, just time-locked progression. But if the game is about people experiencing an ongoing world, having a set story that the world goes through, and you have, Paul's talking about this data that he's collecting based on how people are playing to give ideas for how they can adjust storytelling in the future. In an MMO and in a shared environment, that data can be much more easily organized into meaningful results. So they can know where their players want to be going, and there could be updates every single week about how zones are changing and what's going on. Like, remember in original EverQuest, and like seasonally, giant skeletons would take over like the East Commons, right? And it's basically a newbie area, but you noobs can't be out there at that time of the year. But then all of a sudden they could decide, well, that's not happening anymore. That the night cycle in Kithakor where the skeletons are there, well, something changed in that patch, and now there aren't skeletons at night anymore, and now we need to figure out. Now we need to go talk to people. Now we need to go we need to go figure out what's going on. And then they can build this up. So they don't need to do all of the changes at once. They do a little change here and a little change there and a little change there. And then it all comes together. And once you've created that story, then you can have the big event, which is the expansion quality. But it's just a different type of story conveyance. And I don't think that we've seen it done very well, because it's been about we have conflicting development patterns. We have the linear storyline and BioWare with Old Republic. Paul talks about his looping around and getting back to the other side, but with BioWare it's like, no, I don't want to do that. You're a cheeky one. Get going. What? No, the blatant illusion of choice.
Yep. So these are not entirely new ideas, right? Like, they've been explored for decades now inside of gaming. I'm going to date myself a little bit. Back when I was on Total Annihilation, back in 1999, we had started with this fealty system and with this metagame where, depending on the different battles that you fought, you took over various regions, and the different factions would control different parts of the map and how that would shift back and forth. So you get to the part Now, where you have this this challenge of telling a story in a narrative versus having the players tell their own story, and we get to the Chris Crawford, can players completely craft their own story in a very open world type situation? I'm of two minds about this. I think that players want to feel like they're affecting the overall world. But most players, and this is not to crap on players, most players are not great storytellers. That's why we have great storytellers, right? That's why there are the Stephen Kings, the J.K. Rowlings, and the Cormac McCarthys of the world, because they're really good at telling stories. And people want to consume those stories, although I hate that word, consumer, but people like to participate as a passive participant reading the story and engaging with the story, but may not be able to craft the nuance of it themselves. So I think if you look at a larger MMO-type world where events are happening, and yes, random large-scale events like wars or political factions changing hands or famines or disease, all these things can happen and then affect the player, and that can be part of a story. The real challenge there is how do we give the players enough power that they feel like, I was a hero. I did something that influenced the world. It was me that changed the world, or that had some big impact, yet still tell a compelling story going forward. I think we can do that on small scales. I think you can be local heroes where you have MMO players who save a village or they save a city even while a larger war is happening that's being designed by the player. And if you can give players, randomly that feeling like, oh, I had an impact, then you'll have the best of both worlds. I'm not sure anyone has done it yet, though.
Yeah,
No,
I think
but
I was going to say, I think like Diggs was saying earlier, I think, Revival is a game that's, I'd say, aiming for that. They have this concept of, people can pick a role and pick their own, place they're going to serve in the world, whether they're going to perform a certain function, be in a certain locality, but then they do have the storytellers that are going to be driving larger narratives, and people may see some of those. Maybe where you're at, you might not see any of that narrative in, a given week or two. But I think it's an interesting thing that, blending the idea of content that's continually coming and continually evolving the world with some amount of player agency. Because I feel like players of any genre are kind of like sick of the idea that they're just, going through a story and they don't have any choice or any say, because that interactive medium is leading people to the concept of not only do they want to interact and do things with the story, but they actually want to change the story too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, one of the neat things about MMORPG player agency is that because you have this opportunity to really go about your own business, doing, within the code structure of the game, you can do whatever you want while you're logged in. You can go where you want. You can fight what you want. You make those choices, and that the changes to the world and the changes to the game become a function of what you're doing. It's not communicated back that it feels like that well, but when expansions are coming out, when changes are being made to the game, all of the people that complained, all of the things that we complain about from World of Warcraft now were created based on people watching what people were doing with the game.
Mm-hmm.
And helping them to do what they were already doing. But for some reason, because, it was under the table back then, it was fine. But even with stories, so you could say they can, a development company can come out and say, well, things are changing, and that's because so many people spent time doing this in a game. To get away from just talking about the mechanics and how the game works, but like even the story, that it doesn't need to be, I'm gonna stick with old World of Warcraft, like you need to fulfill the war effort, you need to bring in X amount of cloth so that we can assault Silithus as a unified force or whatever. It doesn't have to be told. It doesn't have to be prompted. You don't have to be told to do that, because then you force people into this grindy thing. But then as you see what people are doing, then the writing team can say, well, because all of these people are doing that, and because this is this is being accumulated in some way, then we can write a result. And they don't have to tell people when it's coming, but they can give enough background to, in retrospect, create that feeling like, wow, I was actually involved in that and I didn't even know. All of those times that when I went out and I was just hunting the easiest thing to get me the most experience, I was, without knowing, causing the end of the world. That's extremely traumatic. But
sure.
That kind of thing, it's easier in an MMORPG than in a singular-driven scope story project, I think, to do that, if that's how people want to do it.
One of the examples I gave on the Revival forums, Revivals, they're doing a modular rollout, so the first stage is just decorating your house. In stage 1 or 2, the players will be able to visit each other's houses, but they have upgrade kits, so there's one that will have a telescope and you can map out what the constellations are looking like, and they have a scholars one and a bar room one, and I was telling people, even you can start role-playing early with that, just as soon as people can move from house to house and see how they've decorated their space, and maybe you go to this person's house to have a drink, and then you go to this other person's house to have your horoscope told. But one of the cool things that the devs could do to move the story forward is just say people have a painting. One of the painting objects options that people have has cats in it. Cats outside of the town running around, and one day the devs changed the painting so all the cats in that painting are missing. And that story, you invite a bunch of people over to your house, and everybody looks at the painting and where are the cats? What's going on? That's a moment. And then you have to figure out what caused that. Right. But you can have these role-playing moments really, really easily and simply, I think. You just have to decide that you're going to move the story forward.
All right, well, we are...
Wait, one thing I want to get in real quick that's kind of related to that is the latest thing that I've been into, and I started this with The Flash, is watching reaction videos where people just film themselves watching the episode, and you see how they're reacting, in the moment, and freaking out. One of the funniest ones was with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The final scene in the final episode this season was crazy, and everybody was basically had their jaws dropped to the floor. But I've also been watching AfterBuzz, where they'll have 2 or 3 people sitting around talking about their review of each episode each week, and I'm thinking that could be a cool thing with episodic games as well, if you do that right the way you're explaining it. Each week, people will be trying to figure out what happened, what's coming next.
Well, it is a hacking game, so we're gonna hack everyone's cameras on their laptop and just watch them playing the game constantly.
There you go.
Okay, that's
we're not
why
doing
I got
that.
the screen.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have a few minutes left here, but we did get a couple questions in. I wanted to ask both, I believe, from our legendary Neurotoxin, who's another co-host and co-creator of this show, who's hanging out in chat with us. But the first one he asked is there a plan to have any professional Twitch and YouTube users playing each episode to show the complexity of the game?
So we're definitely going to get this in front of some YouTube users and Twitch players. We'll probably have a pared down episode version of the first episode, just so that people can see what the experience is like. I imagine that as the episodes come out, that people will just play them and post them. There's issues there about how much that will spoil it, but if people want to spoil it and watch it, they can. We do have a list of professional players that we're reaching out to, and we have the game in a more polished state. We'll get something out to them so that people can at least see what's coming.
Very cool. And the other one he posted too was, This one's a bit more specific. He said, what do you think of Upsilon Circuit with their method of going through a full player-driven story arc over time until it has been completed, then it ends, combined with permadeath, one life per player, and a huge audience participation?
I'm not familiar with Upsilon Circuit, so I'll have to take a look at that and get back to you. Permadeath, it's yeah. Permadeath is curious. I don't know if I'd want to do that to the players or not.
Do you think it would be? I mean, there is a big, I don't know, especially I think too with the Twitch and YouTube thing becoming something, real big. It is kind of like there's more bragging rights to where when you do accomplish something on hard mode nowadays, because you can actually prove that you did it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a big audience for that type of thing. Are you considering looking into maybe coding in a way that, when you die, it sends you back to the beginning of episode 1 and just having some type of mode in there like that, or do you just want players to do it on their own?
Yeah, I think if that's what players want, it's something we could do. One of our core company values is focus on the player. So really, we're going to go and figure out what players want, and if there's a big draw for let's have a super hard mode that just kicks you back to the beginning and wipes your save game. Again, it's a hacking game. We could be very, very cruel and just erase all your save files if you've selected that box, but that's the type of thing I'd want to make an opt-in, right? We're not aiming to make a super challenging, super difficult game. We want to tell a story. So I'm more focused on let's give the players the options to play how they want to play, and maybe it kicks you back to the beginning of the episode, or maybe it kicks you back to the last mode change. Again, if people are clamoring for that, we'll put it in. It's not on our backlog for Season 1, but if people want that for Season 2, hell, I'll go write code that formats your hard drive if people want that and they want to make it really difficult on themselves.
With this, you mentioned that it's you've said several times, well, it's a hacking game, and what are your thoughts on opening up user mods or user-generated content, things like that? Are you looking at building in that kind of toolkit, exposing the API for people to take something that you've made and make it something all new and different?
Yeah.
Or is this, you want to keep it real tight?
So we'll almost certainly release a episode editor at the end of the first season so that players can go and create their own episodes. Right now, with the data format that we're using for episodes, we are digitally signed which episodes are official episodes from Sync Build Run. And then if players want to go and create, one-off, they want to go create fanfiction episodes at the end of the season and ship those around to each other or share them, we're actually totally fine with that. We think that we'll subtly change the game season over season so that, as we tell the story later on, we won't have, episodes that have been custom written from the first season or by players that will, necessarily be usable with the second season. There's some weird IP issues around that, where if players are going and doing these things, we as designers have to be very careful about what we look at and what we play, because we can't go then and make a Season 2 episode that is very like someone's one-off Season 1 episode unless there's proper licensing that says if you go and create this and we happen to create the exact same episode with the exact same story, you don't own that, right? There's all these weird IP issues around that, and we have a crack legal team, so we'll make sure that we're in the right. But again, going back to our core value of focus on the player, we want to make sure that we're providing something that's fun and engaging for the player while still doing the right things for all potential future players. It's a fine balancing act, but I think giving the players the opportunity to go and create things, if they want to do that, is a great opportunity.
Very cool. Well, I think that is all the questions we had drummed up. Let me refresh really quick and make sure. Yeah, that was only 2. So, but I think it's been a great show so far. I think all of us would definitely love to thank you for coming on and sharing. It's definitely, I'd say, far outside of our normal wheelhouse discussing this type of content. So, but I wanted to do it because I did see a lot of relevance to changes in the industry and changes in gaming in general. So, and we're all, passionate gamers here and passionate about design and concepts and mechanics. So it's been a really interesting show, and I think our audience enjoyed it. And so thank you, Paul, for coming on and talking about this game. And If you want to talk, do you have any specific dates for your Kickstarter and for those things that you might want to share with people?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a real pleasure, and I love the discussion about story and where we can go with that in the future. I think you're right. I think gaming is changing a lot. We made this shift to social. We made the shift to mobile. I think now we're making this shift to more persistent content, more streaming content, and I'm excited to see where things are going to continue over the next couple of years. We are looking at doing our Kickstarter on July. Let me get the date right. July 30th. Which is 2 Tuesdays from now. It will probably start around 2 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to run through the entire month. Sorry, did I say July? I meant June. June 30th, 2 Tuesdays from now. It will start at about 2 p.m. Pacific time. It will run throughout the entire month of July, so it will end on July 31st, I think is the last day. So we'll be doing that then. There's some great rewards that are there, from getting the game and getting the soundtrack, to T-shirts, to PDF versions of a making-of book, to actual physical hard copy versions of that book, which if people want, we will sign or autograph or whatever you want, to options about having your likeness in the game, to options about having a phone call or a Skype call with ourselves and our writers and making yourself an interactive character in the game. That's obviously at the higher end of the scale. But we really want player involvement in this because, again, the way the episodes and the story will be told in the future are based upon how the people play it and the choices that they make. So if we can get people involved early on, that's even better for us so we can create a more engaging thing. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It was a real pleasure, and I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, thanks so much. Did anybody else have any last things? You guys have any things you wanted to say for this week? Or
I had a question. The game is called V Next, and
It is.
V is an initial. What does the V stand for?
So yeah, it's kind of a play on, that's a great question. It's a play on a few things. So the main character's name is Vivian Deneau, so she has a V in her name. But she's also a character who is constantly upgrading herself. So she starts out, kind of a blank slate, and then she learns how to play with hardware. So she upgrades herself to version 1, V1. And then the next thing she does is learn how to sneak and infiltrate. So she's V2. And then she's playing with writing codes. So then she's V3. Then she's evading drones on her motorcycle. Then she's V4, right? So V5, V6, V next. So she's always upgrading herself. So it's a play on her name, and then it's also a play on, hey, here's how you advance as an individual. You're constantly growing. You're constantly versioning yourself up.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. I didn't know enough about this when I got here, but I'm pretty excited to check it out.
Cool, yeah, the website is vnext-game.com, so it's just vnext-game.com. And if you haven't signed up for our mailing list, there's a mailing list sign up right up the top. We send out an email every week, just like how we would send out episodes, so you can keep track of some behind-the-scenes stuff, some story writing stuff, where we are with kicking off our Kickstarter, and then once we go into full game production, there'll be some more behind-the-scenes stuff there, so it's a great way to keep track of where we are.
all right, awesome. Well, thanks so much again for coming, and thanks to all the other co-hosts on here for coming and participating in the discussion. Talon, thanks again for coming on, and we hope to have you more in the future too. So thanks everybody else, audience, for watching, participating. We'll see you guys again next week. I believe, I'm not sure who our guest is next week. I think we're actually going to do a group topic breakdown next week. So it may be just us, the co-hosts here, with no guests next week. So it'll be an interesting one. But thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week.
Real quick, before I turn this off, Tanlin, what's your topic for Evercast on Sunday?
Oh yeah, that's right.
We're going to cover the workshop show that they did, that Daybreak Games did on Thursday. I talk a little bit about why Kylesta's not on the show, because she's taking a week off. Some real personal experiences going on there.
All right. Well, thanks again, and I'll really sign off now.
Thanks, guys.